introduction of what Kopi Chat is all about. It is a series of talks where we work together with corporate partners to bring in speakers from all over the world. It is also a platform to connect with the community of entrepreneurs and developers. So before I start introducing today's speaker, let me do a quick shout out for the upcoming Kopi Chat. So next Wednesday, 21st October, 4 p.m., we'll be bringing in Sabio K to share about open source robotics. So for more information, please check out our website, blog71.com. So in this exclusive edition of Kopi Chat, we have Charles Adler, co-founder of Kickstarter, to share on the stories, lessons, and the thinking behind Kickstarter's architecture and design. So the moderator for today will be Brian Poe, the director of NUS Enterprise. So how the format will be like, so we'll start off with 30 minutes of story and experiences shared by Charles Adler, and following that we'll have 45 minutes of Q&A session moderated by Brian. So without further ado, let's get started.
All right, thanks everyone, and a very good afternoon to all of you. We're very privileged to have Charles with us this afternoon, and this is a really short trip for him. It's literally 26 hours. And we're packing every bit of the time that we can with him. So we're very glad that we have him this afternoon itself. So without further ado, I do want to ask, a request. If you are on your mobile, which probably every one of us are, put it on silent mode, okay?
It's like a movie. Yes. It's like a movie.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, Charles, go ahead.
Okay, so is this on?
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really close. It's gonna be like a punk rock show or something. So I was asked to start by telling a little bit of the founding story of the company, and then getting into a couple of, I think, reflections of that moment when we were in the throes of turning vaporware into an actual thing. So I guess I'll start. Anybody use Kickstarter? Has anyone backed a project? Let's ask that question. Backed a project? Okay. Cool. Anybody created a project? Less.
Yeah, that's
All right. So where's the watch dude? Where'd he go? He's not here. All right. Okay. So where this whole thing came from? There's three of us who founded the company. If you're not aware, there's myself, Perry Chen, and Yancey Strickler. The person we're going to start with is Perry. Perry was the sort of genesis of the platform. The story most definitely begins with him. Begins way back in 2001. In 2001, Perry was living in New Orleans. Anybody know where New Orleans is in the south of the U.S.? Okay. Everyone knows where New York is, in San Francisco, in the Valley, that bloody place. Yeah. But New Orleans, maybe not so much. But anyway, okay. So he was living in New Orleans. He was down there doing a mix of things, predominantly making music. That was sort of his focus at the time. And he had this idea in 2001. He wanted to put on a music event. He wanted to hire some DJs and put on this event in conjunction, or in the same time period as this other massive festival called Jazz Fest. Music that he wanted to showcase at his event was electronic music. So he was going to hire a couple of DJs and sort of talk, and he wasn't going to say anything, but share this music that has a very deep connection back to jazz, which is true. So he started putting together who he was going to book as talent, as DJs, find this amazing space, and get the security, and design the flyers, and all the things that go into promoting an event. The other thing that goes into promoting an event is paying a lot of money. You've got to pay the DJs, you've got to pay for their flight, you've got to transport all their records, or if they're bringing live equipment, you've got to bring all their equipment along. You've got to pay the security guards. So everything costs money. You started watching the price tag of this event rise, and he kind of freaked out. Party never happened. And this really bothered him, mainly because he wasn't doing this in an effort, say, to make a lot of money. It's generally not something that you make a lot of money doing. He wanted to share this music that he was passionate about and turn a bunch of people on to a music form that he recognized as having this cultural connection back to this larger festival, right? And why he was sort of upset about this event never happening was because the audience, the potential audience, couldn't actually have a say in whether this would happen or not. So he started looking around online for a way that he could pre-sell tickets to the event. He thought if, let's say, the event cost $10,000 or $1, and if you can raise at least that minimum $10,000, the event can happen. He won't make a penny, but that doesn't matter. The event happened. He was able to do what he ultimately wanted to do, which was share this music with people. Nothing existed. So he went on with his life, but again, this thing in the back of his mind. He was focused on music at the time. He certainly wasn't focused on starting an internet company. And he'd never really done anything like that before. Fast forward to 2005, he moved back to his hometown of New York. So he was born and raised in New York. And started waiting tables at this restaurant in Brooklyn called Diner. And as he was waiting tables, there was a gentleman that became a regular, and these two became friends. As they got to know each other, he found that this guy Yancey, which I sort of foreshadowed a little bit of this guy, Yancey was really into music. So Yancey was a writer, a rock critic. He wrote about music. His whole life was about music. He knew all these bands. He broke bands with his writing. And by nature of that, Perry recognized that this guy had some connection to the arts, as he did. And he shared this idea of Kickstarter, what he was sort of working on. It wasn't even called Kickstarter at the time. And suddenly, one became two. So these two started tinkering with what Kickstarter would be. And what I mean by tinkering is they would work on sketches of what this thing might look like. They would talk to potential investors or figure out who are investors. Mind you, these are not like your typical entrepreneurs, right? They didn't come from that background. So I think for them, they were sort of feeling their way through the dark a little bit. And fast forward again in 2007, and this is where I sort of came into the picture. I'd been introduced to Perry through a mutual friend of ours. It happened to be his freshman college roommate that I happened to work with many years later, that Perry had reached out to. So this guy was a developer, and Perry was looking for somebody to work with him on product design, product development, sort of architecting what this thing would look like and feel like and act. I met Perry, got on the phone with Perry, and he started explaining what this thing was that he was after, this thing that would enable people, creative people, to put their proposal for a project out there, share this personal project that they wanted to bring into the world, and see who was game for supporting them. And the form of support was, or the conduit for support was $1, was money. And as he was going through, I sort of joked that it was, everybody familiar with the term elevator pitch? Yeah. So this was not that. This was a little bit more of a story, kind of like what I'm doing, longer-winded. And I'd sort of stopped them midway through, and it's like, I got it. I think I understand what you're after. So this is a little bit of a quick backstory, if I can, as to why I got it. And there's a sort of side commentary here, which is the importance of side projects. So I've been doing web design and development. My title, I think at the time, was like information architect, which sounds super nerdy. It's not all that interesting. And I've been doing this for about 15 years at that point in time. So around the mid-90s is when I got into web design, web development. I was a webmaster. Anybody know the term webmaster? Yeah, Jedi Knight or some stupid thing like that.
It's more like web tweet master right now.
Yeah, tweet master. I'm definitely not that dude. It's like an ogre sitting in the basement of the math building. That's what I probably look like. So, I've been doing this for a number of years, and professionally doing consulting for large companies, and yet on the side, what I was doing that was far more fulfilling, to be completely frank, was I would, this one side project that equates to this moment when Perry was pitching with Kickstarter was this thing called Subsistence. It was a little website, really not all that epic, but it was a personal project. It was something that was very important to me, that had a very similar, I guess, ambition to what we were working on with Kickstarter. Very, very different mechanism. So what that was essentially a publication. First it was a streaming service back in the 90s, and then in the early aughts it was literally a zine, where I would publish poets, I would publish short stories, essays, original music, and the first version was just basically a radio station in my apartment. The whole point to this was these were all folks, friends of mine, or friends of friends, or friends of friends of friends, that had no outlet. They couldn't get published by a book publisher, they couldn't get on a record label, they couldn't get into the cool galleries in Chicago where I was living at the time, so I wanted to give them an outlet. And I figured I have two hands that I can code and design, and this could be a personal project of mine. So fast forward to 2007, this was the moment that I stopped him. And why I stopped him was because I recognized what he was after was far more interesting than what I was fucking around on before, and had way more impact. It was about creatives supporting creatives. It was about creative-minded people, maybe not those who could execute, but those who had a passion for creativity could support those who could execute, and who had the gumption to actually put themselves out there. Furthermore, it was also about creative control. So I think the bigger arc with Kickstarter was, if you think about historically where the arts have been over the last millennia, it's usually, it's always amounted to this industrialization of the art. You see it in the film industry. When was the last time we saw an interesting film that is a major blockbuster? Yeah, it's been a while. Why? Because they're looking for a formula, because the economics of these large institutions require big hits, right? And big hits don't necessarily necessitate actual creativity. So, and that's not to put a damper on any cool movies that have been out there, because there are certainly cool ones, but the issue is it was about economics first and some interesting ideas second, and the interesting idea always got kind of mangled towards the economics. And what we wanted to keep pure was the original idea, and keep the original idea in the hands of the creator. So Kickstarter is all about creative self-expression and creative control. When you back a project, for the millennia of you that back projects, you have no equity in that project. You're just supporting that person. And what you get in return is a cool thing. A film, book of poetry, book, whatever. So that was the motivation. I suppose I can get into, that's how we all came together. I can go into the period of getting it off the ground. What do I want to share with that?
What was it like in terms of the team bonding and the three of you? What was it like?
I won't talk about that. Yeah, well, okay, I guess I will. Man, that's interesting. That's a long. So this, I mind you, like this was like 7 years, more than 7 years ago. This was like 9 years. 07. What year are we? 15. Yeah, so, thank you, guys. Yeah. Thank you. I don't know where I am. Somewhere in the Pacific. So. Yeah, it was really interesting. I will say this. I'll talk a little bit about the very early relationship, and I think this might speak a bit to who we are, how we approach our business. So, as I mentioned, like Perry and I had a connection that was a mutual friend. So there's at some level like immediate trust. I'm not just some random person off the street. Neither is he. We have a connection between somebody that we knew. Our first, I should say that when I was introduced to him, I was building up my own studio practice. And so I already had a company that I was starting to build up. And I looked at what this was going to be as a potential client. Oh, sweet, a startup. This will be quick because startups don't have any money. So quick and dirty, but it'll be cool. And I liked Perry, and I liked what he was working on. So the relationship was a handshake, which I don't necessarily recommend all the time, but we had a limitation to the handshake. So the handshake was just for a couple of weeks. It was, let's jam for a little bit. I had control over my time because I wasn't like flush with clients. I was just starting out, and we lived down the street from each other. And we would work at his whiteboard in his apartment or down the street at the local coffee shop and just bang out ideas. We would share what he had been working on for all those years. what he was thinking about, what him and Yancey were thinking about, and then we would get up to a whiteboard and just hammer out sessions. And it was very, very cyclical. Somebody asked earlier today, what's our process? We didn't have one. We just sort of made, we just did, right? And we just reacted to one another. And the intention, the handshake was quite simple. It was, hey, let's work for a couple of weeks. And I think a lot of this was driven by the fact that Perry didn't know what he didn't know. So I think his mentality back then, and again, you were making me think many, many years ago, was quite simple. If I can pick up what I need to pick up from this guy, me, in a couple of weeks, sweet, I'll pay him some money, and then off I go. I got all the products up in my head. It was clear at the end of those couple of weeks that I had sunk my teeth into this thing. We were getting along very well, and he didn't have a full house in his head of what he needed to do, and two was better than one, hence becoming co-founder. And that was a lot of the story. I will add this. I did one stupid thing. Well, I did many stupid things, but this one actually I find kind of comical. So we were living in New York. The three of us were living in New York at the time. I'd been living there for about 2.5 years, and I've never lived anywhere since dropping out of college, which was 1995 or 6. I've never lived anywhere longer than 3 years. So I was starting to get a little itchy. Like, kind of sick of New York. I want to go back to California. I'd lived in California once in my life for 12 months. And I want to go back to California. My wife was into going to California. So I did like any smart co-founder would do and leave my partners behind and move literally on the other side of the country, not to be closer to those venture capital guys, because that was not my interest. It was just I wanted mountains and sunshine. I'm a cyclist, so I wanted to ride bikes. Actually, the beaches there are really cold, so I ended up moving to LA if I wanted warmth, not San Francisco. Anyway, so moved to San Francisco, and then about 12 months later, I moved to Chicago. And then 2.5 years later, or 2 years later, maybe something like that, we moved to New York as we had launched. When we launched, Perry and Yancey were in New York. This was 2009, April 28th of 2009. Perry and Yancey were in New York. I was in Chicago, and we had 3 developers, one of which was in Walla Walla, Washington, the other was in Houston, and the other was somewhere in Florida. We were like literally, other than the